Hello, everyone. I'm Ulrick Sidney. Today I'm going to be presenting on what you should do to make research easy for you. So this is intended for early career researchers, especially in low and middle income countries. So I'll be saying LMIC for low and middle income countries from now on. So researchers from LMICs have a lot of difficulties. They face a lot of difficulties, and one of them is finance. The other one is lack of mentorship, and another one is they don't have the resources. So we decided to make this video so that anyone out there that's like, hey, I want to get into research, I don't know where to start. What do I do? How do I do it? Well, here's the video showing you exactly step by step what you need to do. We won't be getting deep down into methods, statistics. Right here, it's just about uh, the practicalities, right? Do it yourself of research behind all those aspects. And what we're going to use is the timeline of the research. So how do you start and how do you finish, quote unquote? Okay. So let's go ahead. First thing first. If you're going to go about research, you need to have a certain question or a problem, something you're interested in. And now is the next question will be, well, is that even relevant? Is it even important? So when you ask that question, then you've done the right thing. And the way to go about it then is to go on the internet and find literature on the topic you're interested in and seeing what have other people said about that topic. So do a basic search. Doing a basic search is, it all starts with Google, obviously. I'll take an example which was given to me recently, which was pediatric brain injuries. And just add a little PubMed there. Yep, here we go. So by reading a few of these articles, what's going to happen is we're going to get a general idea of the topic, right? We will get this idea and we'll be able to determine now, what is it exactly we want to study? How do we do that? We ask ourselves in terms of time trends, how has this topic evolved in terms of geographic areas? How has this evolved too? So I'm going to take a country from the continent Africa, and I'll be like, yeah, let's try Uganda. That's just what came to mind. Uganda, and let's see. Do we have something from Uganda? Oh yes, see that we have something from Uganda for southwestern Uganda. So if we were in Uganda right now, there's this recent study from 2018 that was focusing on the mechanism of pediatric traumatic brain injury. So we can go ahead and study this from another angle. This way, the mechanisms. Maybe we're interested in the time between the injury and the patient getting into the hospital, for example. Or maybe we're interested in after discharge, what do the children become? So looking at the continuum of care. Because we know what's out there, then we can ask the question. Now, we've asked that question. Let's take the question here to be after discharge, what do these children become? Then the way to do this now is, let me share this. Right, we're going to use the FINER criteria. So using the FINER criteria, we're going to determine if it's feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, relevant, right? What you notice is going through these different stages helps you get a very good sense of what your introduction is going to be like. Because if you're able to answer all these questions, then pretty much you're given the background, you're given a rationale, and you're given objectives. That's what makes the FINER criteria. So it is good practice to go through the FINER criteria to try and define and make sure that your research question is actually pertinent. So that's very important, very, very, very key, very, very key. Now, we've said this is a good thing. We want to go ahead. What should we do? Next step, my recommendation, a lot of people don't do it, but my recommendation is come up with a proposal or protocol. Now, if you're going to come up with a proposal or protocol, you're already getting into the research itself. So you need a team, right? And you need to build a team around you. Building a team goes through networking. If you're going to network, find people, like-minded people who have skills that will complement you. These like-minded people should, so it could be a person that has skills in data analysis, someone who's better at academic writing, or someone else who's better in visualization. Now, talking about the research in itself, how to go about it. You're a novice. You have absolutely no idea what we're talking about. You're saying, how do I start? Well, guess what? There are free resources out there for you that you can use. All you need to do is get an internet connection, spend some time on these resources. That will be the Researcher Academy by Elsevier. This. So you have a list of courses that you can take for free. Feel free to check this out, Researcher Academy. Another resource is Autoaid. Here. Now, the big difference between Autoaid and Researcher Academy is Autoaid has like a timeline with deadlines, and more importantly, Autoaid is available at very, very low bandwidths. So if you're someone who's in an area that doesn't have good bandwidth or internet is too expensive, you want to go for Autoaid. Autoaid does have a few videos that you need to watch as well, but generally they have a lot of text that you can read and go through. They have exercises and you can get a certificate, and same thing goes for Elsevier Researcher Academy. So these are definitely good places to start to build foundation. Now, once you build the foundation, we're talking about foundation, right? You don't get everything. So don't expect that once you've done this, you know everything about research. No, you know enough to go to the next level, to take the next step. So you've done this and you have certain skills. Now, like we said, you need to find other people who have skills as well, but that complement you, because maybe there's this one aspect of research that you're not really comfortable with. It could be academic writing. Now, let's make this clear. The fact that you can express yourself and write in English doesn't mean that you can write a manuscript. Writing in science at the university level, that's what we call academic writing. And you can equally take courses on academic writing. And there's free academic writing resources. If you go on YouTube, for example, you'll find the Baltimore Writing Center that has quite a few resources that you can use. So I would advise you to subscribe to the channel and then follow those courses. You can find other academic writing resources. Yep. Listen to them. I like Smart English as well. Really, really good. It helps you express yourself better, because no matter what you find, how novel your findings are, how interesting what you did, or how different, special it was, it won't come across, the message won't come across if the vehicle, the English you're using, is not the best, if it doesn't highlight it. Reviewers will get annoyed because every time they need to ask themselves, does the writer or do the writer mean this? I don't really get this. And if they're asking questions about English instead of asking questions about the science, then you failed. So a well-written but poorly conducted research will get published. a poorly written but well-conducted research will not get published. It won't get published in that state. So it doesn't mean that you should only work on academic writing, but it means that it's very important. So try to get a balance between the two. Now, the other aspect is the data analysis, one of the big aspects, right? Everyone doesn't have to become a statistician. If you have access to a statistician, great for you. If you don't, now look around. Maybe it's you. You can go ahead and do some training in data analysis. Maybe someone else. I would advise, again, a free resource on YouTube is Martin Stats Lectures. Marin Stats Lectures. So Marin Stats Lectures, again, awesome. You can watch a whole list of videos from Marin Stats Lectures on what you should do in what situation. You're welcome to do that. Also, you should use a free statistical software to train yourself. You can use R. Marin uses R. A lot of people advise using R. Now, R is a good software, but if you're not comfortable doing things like coding, you don't need to do a lot of coding when you start with R, obviously, but it's like, if you're not very comfortable with it, then it might not be necessarily the best tool for you. So otherwise, you can use tools like Epidata, which is free. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, I think so. EpiInfo is free. So download a free software, go on YouTube, find a tutorial. I mean, again, easy. EpiInfo, for example, here. Let's take that. Bang, see? You already have like 54 videos, like playlist. That's more than enough for an early career researcher to come up with a decent data analysis. Now, all data doesn't necessarily need data analysis. All research, I meant, do not necessarily need data analysis. So what are the different types of research? Because you have that question again, but can you answer it, and how should you answer it? That's an equally important question. So let's look at the hierarchy of scientific evidence, right? Now, this is a hierarchy of scientific evidence, gives us a general idea of the different types of studies we have there. This is not complete, right? Let's not focus on that. This is just trying to give a global view. For example, one could add quasi-experimental study designs here. Now, at the very bottom, case reports, opinion papers, letters to the editors, editorials, commentaries down here. Lab animal studies and lab cell and tissue studies, cross-sectional, case control, and cohort. The three here are what we call observational studies, right? Randomized control trials, systematic reviews, and meta-analysis. Now, let's say that the two that are easily reachable, if you're starting your career early on, you would find yourself doing easily cross-sectional studies, case reports, as well as opinion papers and letters. Why? Because, well, case control studies are really case control, case reports, cross-sectional studies, case reports, and letters to the editors. They don't demand a lot of money, first of all, or resources, compared to like the other ones above. If you're thinking about a case control study or cohort study, you see another dimension that adds to the data collection, which is temporal dimension, time. You're following a patient either forward in time, prospective, or backward in time, retrospective, or both prospective and retrospective, which is ambispective. That requires a lot of money and human resources and so on and so forth, compared to cross-sectional studies, for example. Cross-sectional studies give you a frame, just simple picture of one moment in time, and that's it. So in that regard, they have a major advantage. And so when you're an early career researcher, you don't have funding, you should look, you should definitely look out for cross-sectional studies. With case reports are the standard today is good practice is to report the case you found and then do a review of existing literature on other cases. So you should definitely do that. Next thing is letters to the editors, commentaries, editorials. Some of them you'll get invited to do them, or you will need to ask the editor-in-chief. Others you wouldn't need to. Now, if you're writing letters to the editor, for example, you need to know the topic. You need to have read a lot. So that is very important. They're very short, so you need to be straight to the point, concise, precise. Now, it's always good, whatever you're doing, to work with people that have experience doing these things or some kind of expertise, because then they guide you, they help you avoid certain mistakes. If you cannot do that, and we hear this very often where people from LMICs tell us that, well, we don't have that many people around us, so what should we do? I mean, my friends and I are unable, we don't have those skills. Aren't we going to be able to do research? No, 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 no. My advice would be, if you haven't done so yet, get an account on ResearchGate. Get an account on ResearchGate. Make sure you define your account really well, okay? So let me just show you. Right, define your account really well, introduction, your discipline, skills, and expertise. There's an algorithm that uses this to propose research that you should read. So it's very important to define this. And then it gives you the opportunity to see what other people are doing in terms of research. And then it helps you find people, connect with them, and then try to collaborate with them, because you're not restricted to your university or country when you're doing research. You can work with other people. So feel free to reach out to people and to ask them if they'd like to collaborate, right? Now, we said the low-hanging fruit for an early career researcher is letters to the editors, case reports, as well as commentaries, etc. Cross-sectional study, obviously, in which we can have things like surveys, for example. Now, if you're going to go forward, if it's a study that needs a more complex design, here I'm talking about anything above lab work. So anything lab research and upward, you should read the Equator reporting guidelines. Now, the Equator network developed these guidelines. So for our study, we're going to think observational study, for example. Let me just remind you that we were talking about we were talking about pediatric trauma in Uganda, pediatric neurotrauma. So if we're looking at the strobe cross-sectional studies guidelines, what this does is it helps us stay focused. It helps us know what we should definitely be defining, what we should definitely think about. Now, doing this is going to help us in the later stages of, in the next step, which will be coming up with a research protocol or proposal. Tells you how to do the title and abstract, for example. Study design here, we're like, oh, you will need, eligibility, inclusion, exclusion criteria. So all these things need to be thought of for you to be able to report them. You won't find yourself at the end of the study when you didn't define all these things, trying to define them. That doesn't work that way. So you need to think about them at the moment. By the moment when you start doing everything. So definitely check the Equator guidelines, because for every type of study you find it here. Now you've done this. Let's write the protocol together. So find a research protocol design template, research protocol. Yeah, you can find, I like this one from publishing, which is part of the New England Journal of Medicine. It's quite cool. So you can download this and you use it, use that template, keep the template and use it to describe what your study will be about. So download this template and then try to populate it wherever you need to. When you do this, feel free to, once you've done it, feel free to come onto ResearchGate, add new, add a protocol, remove this, or proposal to come here, and then you add a proposal. Research, here it is, research proposal. So definitely do that. Whenever you're writing something, please give yourself some time to reread through it. Write it, give yourself 24, 48 hours. 48 hours is actually a good time. Come back, read it, edit it once more, and then send it out to someone, have someone else read through it, because nothing is perfect. The more you spend your time working on something, the more likely that you're developing some kind of tunnel vision, right? And you're not picking up on some mistakes. So be open, share your document with people, and make sure that you're open to honest feedback, right? That when someone tells you this needs to be changed, you're okay with it. You don't just argue pointlessly. So how do you do that collaboration? You've got those people. I think almost every one of us today has a Gmail account. Because you have a Gmail account, you have a drive. And because you have a drive, you have access to certain applications from Google. Some of those applications are the Docs, which is essentially the same thing as Microsoft Word, the Sheets, which is essentially the same thing as PowerPoint, as Excel, Slides, same thing as PowerPoint, and Google Forms. Now, the Forms application is quite interesting. I like to use it personally for data collection. So I'll go through the forms as though I was doing a survey. And if I have to go to a hospital, I'll be like, okay, I'll be collecting patient names, and then when I go to the hospital, I collect that data and I keep filling in the forms. In this way, my data is on the cloud. I'm not scared that if I lose my laptop or my laptop gets damaged, I've lost all my data. The next thing is I can convert the responses directly into a spreadsheet, then do the data analysis. So here again, if you want to know how to use them, there's short videos on YouTube. Go on YouTube and then you type forms tutorial. There you go. Really easy to use, honestly. No, nothing complex. So feel free to do that. Okay. Next step. We have gone ahead and done the protocol. We've written a document. We know what we want to do, and now we want to carry out the research properly. Said now, to carry out the research, we will have. I hope by now you will have obtained an institutional review board ethical approval or clearance, and then you're really getting into it. So getting into it is essentially making sure that you collect that data. In your methodology, you can equally, just coming back to methodology, all the articles that you read, if you see something that's interesting and you want to replicate, you can definitely replicate something that's been done somewhere else. So that's one of the essences of doing this. When you're writing your document, one of the things you want to do is have a reference manager. Having your reference manager, there are two free reference managers that I know of, very popular. Choose whatever you want, to be honest. If you try Zotero, for example, download the connector for your browser. I'm using Chrome, so it's proposing the Chrome browser. And if you look at if you're looking at my browser, what you see here is the connector. So whenever I go to a page, so long as I've opened the application Zotero, I can always click on this and it adds it automatically to my list of articles that I can use for referencing. Again, you want to learn how to use this, go on YouTube, tutorial, short video, really quick and easy, you're good to go. If you don't want to use tutorial, you can use Mendeley. I mean, there's differences between the two software, but if you're starting, there's no big difference. Choose one, stick to it, and then keep using it. Right, so we've collected the data, and we're like, oh, how about we go about with the data analysis we're about to write? If we start writing the manuscript, we want to make sure that we're following some basic principles. Among them, among the basic principles, what we want to do is this manuscript advice anyone to read. So this manuscript is titled Publishing a Clinical Research Manuscript, Guidance for Early Career Researchers with a Focus on Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine, written by Vigianti et al. So really good article. Definitely read this article. It helps you go through that process of how you should be writing, so that, right, what way you should do it. Personally, what I do is I like to start by writing the results, then I go on to the methods, then I go on to the discussion, conclusion, write the introduction, then the abstract. That's how I like to do it. Almost everyone advises to start with the results anyway. So results and methods before. So, and actually the introduction is one of the last things you should be writing. So, and again, why is that? Well, it makes, although it's listed in a certain way, it's easier for you to do it once you have the results to write your methodology, making sure that you capture everything. Is equally easier to discuss before then. And once you've done the discussion, then you know how to introduce, because then you're like, okay, this is what we will be doing in this paper. Otherwise, you find yourself saying something in the introduction and then you write your paper and there's a disconnect, because as you're going down, it happens very often where you intended to do something and then you didn't necessarily do it. So you didn't necessarily highlight certain things. We should be able to read the introduction and know what we'll see in the discussion, the results, the methodology. Really quickly, really briefly, just an overview, a snapshot. Same goes for the abstract. So don't write the abstract before you've written all the sections, for example. So great paper. Advise you to read it. Another thing I'll recommend is for writing is the document called 16 basic paragraphs for a manuscript. I added 2 to mine, so I call it, I basically call it the 18 basic paragraphs to a manuscript. So this is what it looks like. In introduction, each of these points, I think you know this, each of these points are meant to be a paragraph. So first paragraph, statement of issue, rationale, explicit purpose and hypothesis. That's what the methodology is like. You can condense this, actually. You don't need this many paragraphs in the methods. Results should look pretty much like this, where your first table should give a summary of population characteristics, definitely, and so on and so forth. And your discussion, this is where a lot of people, in my experience, have faults. So first paragraph, primary results. What are the key results? What did you find? Avoid restating the results. Don't go in the discussion and give your percentages again plus the ends, and no. Otherwise it reads again like the results. This is very different from writing a thesis, very different. So just give the key results. We found this. So how do you interpret it? How do you put that in the context of relevant literature at the level of your country, the continent, and outside? And then eventually you get to the secondary results. You found other things that were not necessarily the primary target of your study. Always describe the limitations. Every study has limitations. Always describe the limitations to your study. The last paragraph, depending on where you're submitting, could be the conclusion or just be the last paragraph of the discussion. And when I mention this, now what should come to mind is this, the fact that submissions depend pretty much on, let me show you this. Submissions depend pretty much on, I'm going to look for the big guns, okay? Lancet. Submissions depend a lot on the journal they're going for. So if you had a paper that can get published in the Lancet, you want to go for the instruction for authors. Always read the instruction for authors. Never write your paper without reading the instruction for authors from your journal. The instruction for authors from your journal, they're very strict, so be careful. So just as an example, a journal will tell you, hey, our first section is the background. The other will be like, it's the introduction for us. The other ones will be like, our last section is the conclusion, and the others will be like, we don't do conclusions. We want the discussion. It doesn't mean you don't conclude. It's just like you don't have that section, right? Others will be like, oh, we want a text Arial 12. Others will be like, oh no, Times New Roman 14. Others like, no, Calibri 9. Spacing will be different. So read it properly before you start writing. And even before you do that, before you go and say, oh, I want to submit to the Lancet, make sure you're able to submit to the journal. How do you know you can submit to the journal? Now, friends, if you're reading this, if you're watching this, I meant, you're probably an early career researcher and probably from an LMIC, right? And you're from there, one of your big problems is financing. So you want to have a hard think at that. So there's two ways journals, the work journals do, they need to make money from it. First of all, to manage and pay the salaries because they have people working for them, right? But it's equally a business, right? And they still need to make money. So money has to come from somewhere. So there's two ways. There's what we call a subscription-based service, and there's what we call an open access service. Subscription-based service, you, the author, submit your article, it gets processed, it gets published, you don't pay anything. Now, when that happens, your article gets published, but anybody trying to get access to the article has to pay. That is a subscription-based model. So I know all of you have come through this kind of a problem where we're like, let's look for our subject matter. So here we're searching for pediatric brain injury, right? Let's just take one of them. Let's see what happens. Well, this is a free full text, so it won't work. Let's look for one that will be subscription based. I know what we'll do. Just a second. Give me just a second. Let's take this one. I hope this one, it doesn't say, but let's check. Let's see if this is one of them. Right. So this is a subscription-based journal. So if I want to access this article, I need to pay this, which is $37. Now, if you don't have the subscription option, the other option becomes open access. And open access is what we saw initially with the other article that was free. All the text was available for free, which is, let's check that one. I think it was this article, right? Yes. So this article is available for free. What this means is it's open access. So we can read the entire article here for free. And what this will mean is someone paid the fee okay, and usually it would be the author. So you can get access to all the article here for free. So well, this open access model then is someone needs to pay, and what happens is the open access then is a really huge amount of money. It can go from 1,000 to sometimes 3,500, 4,000 US dollars. So a lot of money. So you want to be careful, because if you just submit to a journal and you don't have enough money, even if it gets accepted, then you might not be able to publish. Fortunately, a lot of journals that do open access only, have waivers. An example is the BMC, right? Let me show you the BMC. So BMC has waivers, but then again, you need to, so what you will notice is BMC has classified countries into two. You have low-income countries, which get full APC waiver. So if your country is on this list, you would apply, and pretty much almost every time you will get a full waiver, which means you won't pay. And when your article will get published, everyone will get access to it. Otherwise, if your country is here, what happens is you get a 50% discount. So it's still upwards of 700 US dollars that you would pay. So if your country is on this list, then that's a burger. So that in itself equally restricts where you can submit. And again, every journal or every editor decides who they consider to be eligible for this waiver. So it's not the same for BMC as it is for other Elsevier, for like Elsevier journals, or for like Taylor journals and so on and so forth. So you will need to go through that and learning that. Another thing journals can do is they combine the two models, where they get an open access model plus a subscription model. And when they put it together, they call it a hybrid model. Now, if you go to such a journal that has a hybrid model, generally, they will not let you get an open access waiver. They'll tell you, hey, we have a subscription anyway. So if you're not able to pay the open access, then publish as a subscription. Why is the subscription an issue? As you've seen and you've probably experienced, there are a lot of articles you would have loved to read, or love to see what came out of it, but you couldn't access because there was a paywall. Now, what that means is a lot of people don't get access to that information, and then they don't get to cite it, for example, or they don't get to use the recommendations. So you publishing open access actually increases the impact of your research and influence of your research. So whenever you can do publish open access, it helps it, because you're not just trying to publish, you're trying to get some impact in real everyday life and practice. So that is one thing. And now the question would be, oh, if we're supposed to be if we're supposed to be trying to publish open access, how do we know that something is open access? You have this called the Directory of Open Access Journals. You can come and search here, go through the search and choose by subject. So let's go here, let's browse by subjects and go, let's try and find medicine. Here we go. That's all the open access journals. Now, we are currently in medicine, right? So what we want are the journals here, journals. And this is what we see. So it tells us, for example, that this journal, right, does have open access. APC here is the charge, how much you need to pay for this. So this is a very useful tool, very useful, and you can go through it and, get what you want. You can search it based on specialty. So what we would do if we're searching here, could say neurosurgery. Oh, my bad, sorry. Right. So those with the word neurosurgery in them, this is what we find. We find that there's these three. And you could do the same for other things. am I doing? I think I might be sleep deprived. Right, so cardiology, for example, we see that there's a lot more, 16 of them, and so on and so forth. So this is one way to find them. Now, another way which is equally interesting of you finding where you can submit your article is using the journal finders of major major publishers. So here we have Elsevier's journal finder. Let me use one of my, let me bring one of my article up, okay? And then I'll try with an article I've published already. So that'll be emerging trends. Yeah, let's try this one. So what we need here is, we need at least the title and abstract at the very least to find something. So here we have the title, now we need the abstract. Let's see, did we have the abstract here? Yep, we have the abstract. Okay. Oh, do we? No, we didn't. Okay, no problem. Let's just put this there. Let's just put this there, no problem. No big deal. Let's assume this was the abstract. If you want, you can go further and add keywords to your research, but those two are enough usually. So what happens here is we get a list of journals, and you can play with this citations if you want those with like big citation based on the time to first decision. So those that respond really quickly. So we can be like, okay, our first barrier, I think this should be your first focus, definitely. It should be, hey, how do I get this published without having to spend too much money? So let's say you want something that is open access only, but not subscription. So here, this is a hybrid, so open access and subscription. So it will be the same as having subscription, just subscription. So we're like, okay, just want open access because we're from an LMIC that might not have those. And then we find the first that is open access only. Now, yeah. And here we find, for example, Lancet Global Health, which is open access only. So there's a possibility. It has a quick time to first decision, and time to publication is about 11 weeks. So quite interesting. So why not? And that's how you choose basically how you want it. Yeah. Or you can choose based on citations and whatnot. So not just Elsevier, you could do the same thing. The others have different names, obviously, from Journal Finder, but you could do this for Springer. Springer calls it Journal Suggester. You can use the same thing exactly here, and so on and so forth. So I think you get the idea too. So this is a good way for you to find really quickly. If you're doubting, you're like, where can I submit? This is one way to find those target journals. And I'll warn you against what we call predatory journals. Okay. Predatory journals are journals that will publish anything for money, pretty much. So if you send them some really terrible stuff, so long as you paid, they'll be okay publishing it. So you want to avoid them. You can go on the internet and find lists, okay, of all the predatory journals, but there's no single comprehensive list. So as a result, you need to go through a lot of them. So one way you can do, like if you ever doubt a journal is predatory, I advise you to use Think, Check, Submit. Go to Think, Check, Submit and follow the steps, and you'll be able to know. If you're doubting, I mean, just try another journal. And let me say this immediately: the fact that a journal is not in PubMed doesn't mean it's predatory, and a journal can be in PubMed and be predatory. So that's not it's not like, that's not a criteria. Okay. Right. So we've gone through all this process. I think now you know how to choose the right journal. But another thing we need to be careful with is A lot of journals will want you, if you're applying, if you need a waiver, they will need you to apply for the waiver first, wait for it to be granted before you submit. So be careful too. If you don't get that acceptance, that formal email that says, hey, we've granted you a waiver, you generally avoid submitting, because otherwise it goes through and then they refuse to give you a waiver because you applied after submitting, and then you have to pay a lot of money. So avoid that at all costs. Avoid that. Yeah, so now we've had an article published. It's gone through everything, and now it's published. We're like, oh yeah, great. What we want to do now is we want to communicate. You need to communicate after publication. And what should be done is use visual abstracts. If you type visual abstract primer, you'll find this amazing resource that will help you design a visual abstract. You can go through it. Another form of communication, which is not actually post-publication communication, but equally very important. Whenever you've written an article and you have the results and everything, you're ready to submit, I will advise that you should always look out for a conference to which you can submit your article. So let's think of a theme. We're like, oh, let's do a research on pediatric neurotrauma in Uganda. So we can look for a conference that is like pediatric, one that is neurotrauma, or one that is neurosurgery, or pediatric neurology, those kind of conferences. I hope you get the idea. So the way to go about it is we'll say pediatric, okay, plus conference. Oh, I researched this before. Conference and abstract. Now, if I go to this, for example, what I see is, oh, there's this conference and there's abstracts. This is the deadline. What I like to do as well is check if they have travel scholarships. So you can search on the page, Control F, no mention of scholarships. And this is the way you filter through them till you find one that has like a travel scholarship for people from low and middle income countries. So you could still add this here, scholarship, do that. So this way, what happens is you get to publish the proposal of your research, okay? You get to present the abstract of your research. You get to publish the research in itself. You get to design the visual abstract as well. For the conference, if it gets accepted, you will equally need to design what we call a poster. So if you go on YouTube too, you'll find resources for abstract poster design. All you need is PowerPoint, abstract poster design. Yeah, and you can watch this. So when you go to that conference, you watch this video. So yeah, that's what it should be like. So in recap, what we're trying to show is that it's not impossible to do research when one is when one has the right motivation. Obviously, internet very important, and using. You see, I was showing a lot of things, and the results were you need to go to Google, you need to do this on the internet, and so on and so forth. So it becomes a tool. But once you have that, you can do pretty much anything. Then that was what I had to say today. I will appreciate your comments below. Please make sure you put comments. Tell us what we can improve on. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you would like us to talk about next time. Would love to get feedback from you. Absolutely love to do that. So please, please, please comment, share, like. Have a great day.